The first tremor was a low rumble, barely a whisper through the cyclopean stones of our city. We, the people of Atlas, had long grown accustomed to the earth's restless spirit. Our island, a formidable peak rising from the boundless ocean, had always hummed with the deep pulse of the world. But this was different. This was not the familiar sigh of a sleeping giant, but the guttural roar of one tearing itself apart. I remember gripping my little brother's hand, his small fingers surprisingly cold and mine as the very air around us thickened. It was heavy with an unseen pressure. The massive terraced fields that climbed the lower slopes of our capital, each irrigated by ingenious channels carved from the living rock, began to ripple, the precious topsoil shuddering like disturbed water. Above, the sky, a vast, open expanse, unlike the enclosed domes some tales describe, began to churn with a furious, unnatural darkness. The horizon swallowed by an approaching wall of water. Then came the sound. Not a simple crash, but a terrifying rending, as if the very fabric of the world was being torn asunder. The bronze-gated harbors where our great triremes once docked groaned and warped, the colossal stone piers cracking like dry kindling. The majestic temples of Poseidon, built from red and black volcanic rock and adorned with intricate gold and silver inlays, swayed precariously. Their massive fluted columns, each a testament to generations of masons, began to shed their ornate carvings in a shower of dust and fragmented art. Panic, a raw animalistic fear, surged through the crowds in the great agora. Our advanced canals and our vast irrigation systems, our very mastery of the sea, felt as brittle as sun-baked clay against the cataclysm that was consuming us. I saw my mother, her face etched with terror. She reached for us, our pleas swallowed by the escalating thunder. The ocean, our lifeblood, our provider, was becoming our executioner. And we, the descendants of Atlas, were powerless to stop it. I'm Courtney.
And I'm Brandon. And welcome to the Time Travelers Club. So this week's episode is brought to you by Childhood Nostalgia. Yep, Courtney mentioned she was watching the Disney cult classic, and she had me spiraling down a rabbit hole like the ADHD gremlin I am.
I mean, who doesn't love A Tale of a Lost Empire?
I know. And then there's just me like, ooh, archaeology, because I was a nerd kid. Like, I was just like,
archaeology.
He's like, he works at a museum. Neat. like it was just like an aesthetic for me. I'm like, I was just living vicariously.
A little bit. I think more so like seeing Kira was kind of like my bi awakening a little bit. It was just like, oh.
There was like me too a little bit, but like I was more like, like I wish I had a friend like that, and like we'd be cool, and she would show me the culture, and I'd be super respectful of it, because I'm gay. And I was like, wow, okay. Her outfit's super hot, but like yet there was nothing going on down there, But
beautiful.
I was just like, what an awesome, powerful, intelligent woman. She should be queen. So, but while definitely deserving a live action series, let's be honest, though, they'd ruin it,
Mm-hmm.
They'd find a way to ruin it.
They ruin it.
Today, though, today we are going to talk about where the idea for Atlantis even came from. Well, normally we would time travel to historically proven times and places. We decided that today we would take a fun detour off our main narrative and into the murky realm of, I know you don't like it, we'll say pseudo history is officially what it's called, but I think you had something like a better term for it.
I mean, it's not necessarily that it's wrong, pseudo history, things like that. And I don't recall the term you are talking about, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, we were like talking about doing this, you were like, I
Oh
don't like
gosh.
pseudo history. It's like, but it's ultimately when we say pseudo history, we'll get into it. Atlantis, as we culturally know it, no, does not exist. Okay.
Mhm.
But there there, even if it was a fictional, everything's fictional about it, it was inspired by historical things. And I think we can
Yes.
agree on that.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether,
We can definitely agree on that, and not just that, but with Atlantis overall, it
mhm.
is still a tale of morality. It still
Yeah.
has things like that. It's just like biblical tales or any kind of folklore. If we're super super honest, there's nothing wrong with
Mhm. Yeah, and I think this actually segues well
that.
into what we're going to talk about today, which is this is going to be a three-parter, and this first part's really going to focus heavily on the ancient, like quote unquote, sources of it, but specifically the like where it originally came from, the philosophical context, which was a tale about morality, about governance and like what an ideal, well, their version of an ideal civilization could be, and like what happens when you don't, do what you're supposed to. Fall of empire.
Hmm.
So, with that being said, Atlantis is, of course, one of the most enduring and fascinating myths in human history, captivating people, including us, for thousands of years. The whole Atlantis saga kicks off with good old Plato, the ancient Greek philosopher. So let's picture him for a minute. He's chilling, sipping some watered down wine because only barbarians drink it straight. Us. But and he's deciding to spin a yarn in his works. This work is called Timaeus and Critias. He wasn't trying to write a history book, mind you. He was just crafting an allegory, basically a fancy way of saying a story with a hidden meaning. In this case, it was about the dangers of nations getting too big for their britches, or in his words, hubris, the
Hmm.
more official term. But Pato, Pato, I sound good. Pato.
Pedo.
It sounds like maybe I should be watering down the wine.
It's
Like I ain't
okay.
even drinking.
It's okay.
Maybe he's on something. Plato painted Atlantis as a super duper powerful naval empire that basically ran the whole Western world back in the day. Think of them as the ancient equivalent of a mega corporation, but with more ships and fewer quarterly reports. They were essentially the mirror image of the Achaemenid Empire. That being, so we would know them as like the Persians, but that's such a blanket term, like
Hmm.
which Persians, right? And because there are many different forms the Persians take. But the Achaemenids probably the oldest version of that empire, right? And it's the
Yeah.
one when we think of 300 and he's half naked and like 7 foot tall and like wearing ridiculous shit. Like that's the one. That's the one we're referring to, even though he didn't look like that.
Hmm.
Xerxes did not look like that, but that's okay. But that's the Achaemenids. So this was essentially a mirror image of that empire. So just so that he had a rival in mind.
Honestly, and this is just me kind of pulling from my own mind. It almost sounds like Atlantis was the British Empire. And that's going to
Yeah,
sound wild. That's going to sound wild because, like,
yeah. I mean,
what?
you have to. I think I read somewhere, and again, this is me really ad libbing. Please don't use this for your paper. Do not quote me when I'm saying this, but I do know it's something like this, right?
Hmm.
The Persian Empire, by the time of the quote unquote like 300, like the Greek city states, Plato's era, right? Well, he technically came right after like that kind of thing, but Plato's time period, Persian Empire accommodated for like I think a quarter of the Earth's population.
Hmm.
Like that's why like a quarter of the world
Holy
lived
shit, that's
under
a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's not like you have to think there's a lot of nothing in between some of these people, right? And like, it's
Mhm.
not that other civilizations didn't exist elsewhere, but like Persia was really flourishing, right? Like the Greeks were like a blip on that map, and that's why it's honestly surprising that they were able to resist the Greeks when they did. There's a lot of reasons. This is not that podcast, but it's just like when you actually look at the numbers and just like a map and you're like, holy crap, that would be like a country like Iceland fighting off Europe. And you're just like, like the size wise, you're like,
Mhm.
huh? Like it's, it's intense. Um,
Absolutely.
so
All right. So, as all good cautionary tales go, Atlantis got a bit too full of itself. They tried to conquer ancient Athens, which, let's be real, Plato probably made that up to make it look like his perfect ideal state. And because the gods apparently have zero tolerance for imperialistic shenanigans, bullshit,
yeah.
Atlantis
Okay, Plato.
Atlantis got hit with the ultimate divine smackdown. It submerged into the Atlantic Ocean. Poof, gone in a splash. Plato's big takeaway here was basically, see, my ideal state is way better than your fancy sinking island. Neener, neener, boo boo.
Well, like, and I think that's funny because it's like, oh, Atlantis fell because they were going into empire, not like our empire if it's forming an empire at this moment, you know,
Yeah,
like
and it's funny because you can also sit there and kind of pull from the, oh, we are divinely protected and you're not. We are chosen by the gods and you're not. That
yeah.
kind of attitude. And that's kind of fucked up, guys. That's
I mean, like,
kind of fucked up.
was like the Athenian version of like they wouldn't have been called an empire, right? But like the
Yeah.
Peloponnesian League, right? Like you've got, well, that's the other side of it. Point is just that their quote unquote league was them dominating and forcing other city states into submission to theirs.
Yep.
It was essentially a micro empire. Like, yeah, by no means it was nothing compared to like Persia, but it's like it's just like a micro version of the same thing, like a teacup poodle. They were a teacup empire,
It's just a teacup empire. It's okay.
just like Yappy.
Very, very happy. Oh, God. All right. So now, here's where this gets interesting. Even though Atlantis is just a bit player in Plato's philosophical playground, it totally blew up in popular culture. Well, ancient popular culture, anyway. The whole lost utopia vibe really resonated with Renaissance writers. Guys like Francis Bacon and Thomas More were practically taking notes, using Atlantis as inspo for their own perfect society books, like New Atlantis and Utopia.
Because they can come up with such original names.
I mean, why tarnish it? Really? It's a nod. It's absolutely just a nod. Then in the 19th century, things went a little off the rails. Some amateur scholars, bless their hearts, totally missed the memo that Plato's story was, fictional. The most famous of these was Ignatius L. Donnelly, who basically decided, nope, this has to be real, and wrote Atlantis, the antediluvian world. And because Plato was super vague about when this alleged sinking happening, over 9,000 years before his time, and where it was, beyond the Pillars of Hercules, basically the Strait of Gibraltar, it opened the floodgates for all sorts of wild, pseudoscientific theories. Fast forward to today, and Atlantis is still the poster child for any supposed advanced lost civilization. It's everywhere, from comic books to Hollywood blockbusters, proving that a good mystery, even a made up one, never truly sinks.
And you know, the thing is, it's like it's funny. It's like people go like, "Well, he said it existed 9,000 years ago at this point," and I'm like, it's kind of like if you're telling a story to a kid and you're like, long ago in a kingdom far, far away. That's the equivalent, right? And then you might get a kid who goes, well, how long ago? Oh, I don't know, like 1,000 years ago. Ah, like, well, where was it? Somewhere in like Russia. I don't know, like so, like far away. That's the vibe. It's like because the edge of the world, as he kind of knew at the time, was not that they didn't think things might exist beyond that, but like that was like that seems far. No one's going to double check this. This like the Straits of Gibraltar, where it feeds into the Atlantic Ocean. No one had gone really beyond that, right? So it's about as far away as you can get. And 9,000, no one like 9,000 years. That's way before anything's recorded that we know of. So he's like, can't like it's again. That's not the point. The point is like the story itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, people take it super serious. And I'm like,
super serial.
It gives the equivalent of like long ago. So what's the deal now? Pretty much all the smarty pants philologists and classicists agree Atlantis is just a work of fiction. Full stop. However, they do debate what might have inspired Plato's tall tale. The dude was known for borrowing bits and pieces from older stories, like that time he swiped the story of geeks. So, some scholars throw around ideas like maybe it was inspired by Egyptian records of the Thera eruption. That was a massive volcanic explosion that blew up the island of Thera during the time of the Minoan Empire, right? The Minoan, well, empire is a strong word. That one's more civilization. They weren't necessarily conquering. They conquered and trade, but people really wanted to be a part of that. So they were like, ooh, these people are doing well. And their ladies are doing well because it may have been matriarchal. Perhaps it was the Sea People's invasion, which again, around the same period of time. Or it could have even been a reference to the Trojan War, because again, it's a good love story, right? Inspired by that Trojan War, like Troy is kind of viewed as an Eastern culture, sort of Greek, sort of not, but like that they were super wealthy and had all these trade powers, blah 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 blah, and then like despite all of their wealth and all of their power, they fell. So I mean, like you could see the parallels. But then you have the other camp who are like, nah, Plato just made it all up. Well, no inspo off the top of his head. They suggest he might have been loosely inspired by like the contemporary screw up, like the failed Athenian invasion of Sicily, or the actual sinking of a Greek city called Helike due to an earthquake. I'm in the camp that it might be all of those things, but
I mean, who can really tell what inspired a writer? Really,
like it could be literally all of those things,
Absolutely.
But while we're not likely to find Atlantis with a metal detector anytime soon, the debate about what sparked Plato's imagination is still going strong. So that's pretty wild. What do you think? Any theories of your own? Like, do you think that this checks out?
I do, and realistically, like every story has a grain of truth in there somewhere. That's the way that I think about it. There has to be inspiration from something, just like you don't dream up new faces. If you dreamt a face, you've seen it before. Um, the world is full of new ideas, but a lot of them are recycled.
Well, the other thing is too, you have to remember the time period, right? I mean, we're so used to freedom of speech, where like if someone's even censored, it's dealt with shock and awe and outrage. But like back then, right? If he was like one theory is that he was criticizing the Athens, actually, not the Achaemenids, but actually Athens, right? It wasn't propaganda; it was the opposite. It was because of, like I said, they were a toy. They were like a toy empire, a toy poodle, toy empire, mini empire, and he pointed this out. Like, we're supposed to be a democracy, blah, blah, blah. But you can't say this shit out loud.
So you have to say
So,
it in allegory, otherwise it's off with your head.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, like from what I understand, Plato, unlike Socrates, like was very pro-Athenian, so it could be very well it was propaganda. But like, you can still be stupid patriotic, right? And be like, have a critique and know that that critique could get you killed or misunderstood. So you use the allegory anyway, right? Like,
Yeah.
mm,
And that makes
so
sense.
right. And being inspired by maybe a failure where they didn't invade and it didn't work out so good, and they were like, maybe, like I write this like tale that kind of goes, don't get too big for your britches.
Yep.
So, um, so let's dive into the juicy details of where this whole Atlantis obsession actually comes from, though. Straight from the horse's mouth, or in this case, Plato's brain.
So here's the deal. If you ever hear anyone talking about Atlantis, they're basically just rehashing what Plato wrote in his dialogues. Timaeus and Critias. Seriously, these two books are the only primary sources. Everything else is just fan fiction, reinterpretations, or wild speculation. Plato claimed he was just quoting Solon, who was apparently some ancient Greek tourist who visited Egypt around 590 to 580 BC. The story goes that Solon got his hands on some super secret Egyptian records about Atlantis. Sounds a bit like My Girlfriend Lives in Canada, doesn't it? But hey, it was a good narrative device. I heard from someone else. We use it all the time.
Mhm.
In these two dialogues, you've got a small crew. Critias, a politician, Hermocrates, another politician, Socrates, the famous philosopher, though he just mostly asks questions here, and Timaeus of Locri, a philosopher. But here's the kicker. Only Critias actually talks about Atlantis. Everyone else is just kind of there. Plato, being the philosophical ninja that he was, used his trademark Socratic method to debate different viewpoints, even if he was the one creating all of the viewpoints. The whole thing in Timaeus starts with Socrates daydreaming about the perfect society, like the one he laid out in his earlier work, Republic. He's like, wouldn't it be cool if we had a story that showed off a society like that? And Critias, bless his heart, pipes up with what he claims is a historical tale that fits the bill. That's when he spills the tea on Atlantis in the Critias dialogue. The vibe is pretty clear. Ancient Athens is the good guy. The perfect society in Atlantis is the ultimate bad guy, representing everything wrong with, well, everything wrong with not being Plato's ideal state.
So, according to Critias, the Greek gods were basically playing real estate agents, dividing up the world, and Poseidon, being god of the sea, naturally got the sweet gig of Atlantis. And boy, was it a sweet gig. Critias says that this island was ginormous, bigger than ancient Libya and Asia Minor put together. So again, when we think like Libya, something we're talking about that like swaths of land of North Africa and what would be Turkey today. So that whole like both of those areas combined. That's apparently the size of this island, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, but as we know, even the biggest things can get leveled when an earthquake hits. After its epic downfall, it became the impassable muddy shoal, basically turning that part of the ocean into a cosmic do not disturb sign. Plato, through Critias, even gives us the architectural blueprints from the Egyptians, quote unquote. Atlantis was mostly mountains up north and along the coast. But then he had this huge oblong plain down the south. We're talking seriously massive, 3,000 stadia, which is about 345 miles in one direction and 2,000 stadia, or about 230 miles across. At its heart, there was a mountain with a tiny island about half a mile wide. The story goes that gets even more mythic here, though. Poseidon apparently fell head over heels for a mortal woman named Plato. They had 5 sets of twin boys because as if we were already questioning the historiography of this, right?
Oh my
Like
God.
what are the
5
chances?
sets of
5?
twins. That poor
Yeah,
woman.
I
Whew.
know. It's just like God. She by I swear to God, by the 3rd set, they were like strolling out. Like God,
Leave her alone. Oh my
they
gosh.
she needed divine intervention just for that.
I mean, technically, they were divine intervention. That was the problem.
Like yeah, like Poseidon's there. He better make it like pull some wackadoodle like bull crap. None of this is like making her like eggs crap like Zeus did.
Oh my God.
That,
Yeah.
yeah, and like to be fair, I just thought that's the twin story for him. Like you had Helen and what's her face and oh God, the Gemini ones there. Why am I blanking? Anyway, the point is twins, right? And she had like 2 gigantic eggs that had twins in them.
Yep.
Like as you do. But this poor lady, she's got 5. God. Um, but the eldest, Atlas, not that Atlas, like the big giant that holds the world up Atlas, different Atlas, became the first king of the whole island. And that's why we call the Atlantic Ocean the Atlantic Ocean, apparently. His twin, Gadrius, got the part of the island near the Pillars of Hercules. The other 8 brothers also got sweet territories to rule. But, like I think like listing them after a while probably got like boring.
Mhm.
Um, we're like, and the other 8 also got shit. Poseidon, being super romantic, carved a palace into the mountain where Cleito lived, surrounding it with 3 concentric rings of moats inland. The Athenians, being engineering whizzes, built bridges, dug canals to the sea, and carved tunnels for ships, all guarded by gates and towers. Not those cool ass statues like Disney did, apparently. No, the verdict's out on the giant golems.
No,
No mention
I
of those.
wish. The giant golems would have been awesome, though. And
Yeah,
I
that would be
think you
pretty
meant the
cool.
Atlanteans, not the Athenians.
The Athenians, yeah, like it's all the same.
I mean, technically, yes. Technically,
We're
it is all the
arguing that,
same.
to be fair, we're arguing that's not. But,
True.
but, um, but, you know what I meant.
I
You
do.
knew what I meant, guys. So we've got all these towers, all these gates, all these cool canals. The walls themselves were built from red, white, and black rock, straight from the moats, and covered in brass, tin, and precious metal called oh my God,
Orichalcum.
auric. Yeah, why am I struggling with that? We practiced. We
We did.
practiced.
We
Orichalcum.
practiced. Orichalcum.
Orichalcum. I'm done. All right. So, sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, right? Well, then comes the epic war. Critias recounts that 9,000 years before his time, the Atlanteans, who had conquered huge chunks of Libya all the way to Egypt and Europe, as far as Tyrrhenia, and apparently they enslaved everybody, faced off against an alliance of Athenians because somehow they managed to not get caught. Which
Mm-hmm.
again definitely supports the idea that this is inspired by the Achaemenids because that was their whole thing too. Was the Achaemenids came in, they had conquered all like on the other side of other side they had conquered all the land, and Athens was kind of the last stop, and Athens was the ones who kicked them out. In theory, so you can see the parallels for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
But when the alliance crumbled, Athens, being the ultimate underdogs, heroically stood alone against the mighty Atlantean Empire. But the good times weren't going to last for Atlantis. Bam! Violent earthquakes and floods. In just one day and night of pure chaos, all of their warriors vanished into the earth. The island of Atlantis was swallowed by the sea. And that's why that part of the ocean was apparently still uncrossable and mysterious, thanks to all the mud from the sunken island.
It's worth noting that a guy named Hellanicus of Lesbos wrote an earlier work called Atlantis, but only a few snippets survive. It seems to be more about the daughters of Atlas, but some smart folks think Plato might have even snagged the title or even some stylistic inspiration from Hellanicus when he was detailing the Atlantean king's genealogy. Interestingly, Rodley, wow, Rodney
Broadly.
Castleton, Rodley, wow, my tongue was just like, where are all these Greek names? That one's English. Fuck.
Castleton.
Rodney Castleton pointed out that Plato penned the Atlantis tale in 359 BC, right after he got back to Athens from Sicily. And apparently, there are a bunch of similarities between the layout and the defenses of Syracuse, where Plato had tried to implement his philosophical ideas, probably with mixed results, and his descriptions of Atlantis. So maybe Plato was just getting some inspiration from his own travel experience and a bit of what if thinking. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Was Plato just flexing his creative muscles, or was there a tiny grain of truth that sparked this incredible legend? All right, let's chat about the ancient world's split decision on Atlantis. Real or just a really good story? Because even back then, people couldn't quite make up their minds. So after Plato dropped his Atlantis bombshell, people immediately started taking sides. Some ancient writers were like, nah, this is totally just a cool allegory myth with a moral. Others, however, were convinced it was a legitimate history lesson. Take Aristotle, for instance. He was Plato's star student, and he pretty much scoffed at the idea. He thought his teacher, Plato, had simply invented Atlantis to get his philosophical points across. Basically, nice try, Boomer, but I see what you're doing.
Yeah, and like honestly, I feel like that's probably an indicator right there. Like it's his star pupil, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it was real or sourced off of like something super real, when you know what I'm saying, like the fact that he's like, nah, guys, it was just a story. I'm gonna probably take his word for it. But then you have Franter. This guy was a student of one of Plato's students. So we're getting deep into the academic family tree here. And he often trotted out as the poster child for believing Atlantis was actually history. His writings, which were complementary to Plato's Timaeus, are unfortunately lost to time, which is a bummer. But a guy named Proclus, a Neoplatonist from the 5th century AD, gives us the scoop. Proclus spills the tea. Regarding this whole Atlantis tale, some folks like Crantor say it's just straight up history. Crantor also mentions that Plato's buddies used to playfully tease him, saying he didn't invent the perfect republic, but he copied Egyptian institutions. Plato, taking them seriously enough, then decided to give the Egyptians credit for this story about the Athenians and Atlanteans, making it seem like the Egyptians were saying Athenians really did live like that. Now, here's where it gets a bit murky, even for ancient texts. The very next sentence from Proclus's account, often translated as Cantor, adds that this is testified by the prophets of Egyptians, who assert that the particularities which are narrated by Plato are written on pillars which are still preserved. Sounds pretty convincing. Like Frater saw some hieroglyphics confirming the whole thing. But there's the catch. The original Greek starts with the ambiguous he, as in he adds. Who's he? Is it Cantor? Is it Plato himself? This tiny pronoun has launched thousands of academic debates. Both sides, the myth believers and the history believers, have argued he refers to their guy.
Alan Cameron, A modern scholar throws a wrench in the Crantor saw it theory. He argues that he most likely refers to Plato. Cameron suggests Proclus was basically saying, we need to remember this whole Athenian feat isn't just a myth or just history, even though some people, like Crantor, take it as history and others as myth. In other words, Proclus was kind of dismissing Crantor's view as one of opinion, not solid proof. Cameron also points out that no matter who he is, it doesn't support the wild claims like Crantor went to Egypt and saw pillars covered in hieroglyphics proving Atlantis, or Crantor sent a special inquiry to Egypt. It's more likely just reference to Plato's own claims about the Egyptian source. So, sorry guys, no ancient Egyptian receipts for Atlantis have surfaced. But if this wasn't enough, Proclus actually has another fascinating passage where he describes Atlantis's geography, hinting at another author who investigated the things around the outer sea. He mentions that according to them, there were 7 islands sacred to Persephone and then 3 enormous ones dedicated to Hades, one to Ammon, and a third, 124-mile long one to Poseidon. And the people on that island apparently remembered the immeasurably large island of Atlantis that used to rule the whole Atlantic. He credits this info to a guy named Marcellus, apologies, in his Aethiopica. But who Marcellus was is still a total mystery. Beyond Crantor, some other ancient heavyweights like Strabo and Poseidonus, historians and philosophers, apparently believed Atlantis was real too, so it wasn't just a fringe idea. But wait, there's more. Here's another fun twist. Some theorists have suggested that before the 6th century BC, the famous Pillars of Hercules, which we usually think of as the Strait of Gibraltar, might have actually referred to the mountains around the Gulf of Laconia in Greece. If that's true, it would place Atlantis squarely in the Mediterranean Sea, which would have suddenly made a lot of Plato's descriptions sound way more plausible.
Then we have the 4th century historian Ammianus Marcellinus. He got info from Timogene,
Timogene.
a 1st century BC historian, and apparently the Druids of Gaul. I love that. It's so dramatic. France. It's Druids that lived in France. And these Druids of Gaul claim that some of their ancestors migrated from these distant islands. I'm having a hard time believing this. This is giving Canadian Girlfriend again. Just
A little
saying.
bit. A little
bit, but that's okay. Now, some people have totally jumped on this, though, thinking, aha, when Atlantis sank, the inhabitants fled to Europe. But hold your damn horses. Ammianus actually says the Drazidai, Druids, recall that a part of the populations is indigenous, but others also migrated from the islands and lands beyond the Rhine. That's north of Gaul, not in the south, not out in the Atlantic. So it sounds more like people came from places like Britain, Netherlands, Germany, not a sunken continent. And we have proof of that part. Like we do have proof of that.
Yep.
That's there was migration going back and forth for like prehistorically, all the way back then. So that part makes sense. But not mystical islands with, Poseidon banging a lady and having tons of babies. As cool as that all is. So it sounds more like people came from places like that. Plus, he mentions that the Celts near the ocean worshiped twin gods that came from the sea. Interesting, but probably not Atlantis refugees. Though I do want to know more about that. That sounds interesting.
That sounds like something to dive into.
I know. But we probably don't have anything, on that. I'm just saying, Like that seems way more interesting. But
I'm taking notes. We'll look into
you know,
see if we can find anything about it.
I know. But like then it's like, but then all of our sources are by people like this, you know. So you're like,
Uh,
how believable is that? How much are they actually misinterpreting? Who knows? But anyway, conveniently, the Celts had no written language or records left to us to check this guy's sources. So again, oh, my girlfriend lives in Canada, but she doesn't have email. Like, you can't know. Her parents don't let her do social media. Mm-hmm. Sure.
sure, bud.
But that makes you wonder about those sources even more. Anyway, while the idea of the real Atlantis has floated around for millennia, the closer you look at the ancient quote unquote evidence, the more it seems like it's just a fascinating game of telephone mixed in with some philosophical allegory. So, what do you make of all these ancient takes?
I mean, people love exceptionalism at all roots. So the idea of Atlantis being this amazingly advanced technology, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm descended from that. Of course, people
Yeah,
would want to
or
claim it. Of course, people would want to claim it. Let's be super real.
attribute it to other people, right? Like,
Hmm.
because that almost gives you more reason, like, oh well, like that's our reason for taking over Gaul, because there used to be Atlanteans living there, so culturally they just need to remember their heritage. I don't know, insert.
It is. It very much reads manifest destiny. So let's keep this Atlantis party going and check out what some of the early religious thinkers had to say about this infamous sunken island. Turns out they were just as divided as everyone else. Next up, we have Philo, a Hellenistic Jewish philosopher kicking around in the early first century. In his work on the eternity of the world, which sounds like a real page turner, right? He actually brings up Atlantis. He's supposedly quoting Theophrastus, who was Aristotle's successor. So we're still in that ancient academic lineage. Philo basically says, and the island of Atlantis, that's how the translator spelled it, fancy, which was bigger than Africa and Asia, just like Plato said in the Timaeus, got swallowed by the sea in just one day and night. This was thanks to a super intense earthquake and flood, and poof, it was gone, becoming a part of the sea, but not the fun navigatable kind, more like the swampy mess of gulfs and eddies. So Philo's on board with the Atlantis sank narrative, leaning into the whole bigger than Africa and Asia detail that makes it sound so epic. Now, a couple centuries later, Joseph Barber Lightfoot, a theologian, chimed in on this passage, and he mused that Philo, or whomever Clement was, who he had also mentioned, might have been talking about a real but hard to reach land beyond the Pillars of Hercules. But, more likely, he figured that they were just contemplating some unknown land far to the west, like the fabled Atlantis of Plato. So even back then, there was this whiff of, is it real or is it just a great story?
Yeah, and I mean, like, we keep seeing this over and over again. Like, Aristotle says, nah, bro, just a cool tale. His students like, nah, it was super real, guys. Like, I've got proof, but oh yeah, no, I can't show you. And then you've got this kind of over and over and over again.
I've
You
got proof,
know,
but I can't show you guys. That would
like
just
I left the
that would just
home.
hurt everything. I can't show
Yeah,
you.
right. Like, like I know that she's got those emails, and no, I don't have proof. I've got it. God. Anyway, like no, those files don't exist. Don't. But no, no, no. You don't need to look at the records. No, 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 no. Those Epstein files don't exist. No, no. Don't look too hard. Anyway, so eventually, early Christian writers also got in on the Atlantis action, and their opinions were, you guessed it, a real mixed bag, because of course they were. Some thought it was totally a thing, and others were like, nah, it's just some pagan nonsense. Don't trust it. Which now I want to believe it out of spite. Like,
A little bit, a little bit.
just so first, we've got Tertullian. He, for example, was an early Christian bigwig who believed Atlantis was real. He wrote, in the Atlantic Ocean, there once existed an isle that was the size of Libya or Asia, like we've seen before, clearly echoing Plato, blah, blah, blah. So for him, it wasn't just a myth. To him, it was a verifiable piece of ancient geography. Then there's Arnobius, another early Christian apologist. He also brought into the Atlantis existence, but with a fun twist. He blames its destruction on pagans. Yeah.
Yep.
They got sunk because God was mad they were pagan.
Oh.
Which I'm like, okay, then why didn't he just destroy literally everything?
Exactly.
It's like, I mean, like, then they'd be like, well, there was the whole flood story there, but they're like, yeah, but then pagans existed after that. Anyway, so I'm like, just like, anyway, like, were they too pagan? Like, how can you be too pagan? You know, anyway. So,
I mean, that is definitely a conversation we can have, but
but
not this time.
all you need to know is, because, you know, everything that bad happened was clearly the pagans' fault. That is the vibe we're getting.
The devil made
Finally, right. Finally, let's not forget Cosmos Indicopleutes. Indicopleutes. Yeah, that sounds right. From the sixth Cosmos. He's Mr. Cosmos from the 6th century. This guy was a merchant and a monk who had some, shall we say, unique views on geography. He wrote Christian topography, largely to prove his very firm belief that the world was flat, surrounded by water. So he was the first flat earther YouTube guy.
Oh God.
Like, trying to prove it. Like,
Yep.
he's a flat
there's
earther.
your proof right there. There's your proof right
Well,
there.
and like, yeah, and to be fair, guys, I just want to point this out. We talk about it a little bit in our Ptolemaic Dynasty episode, cultural episode. Like, they did understand that the world was probably round. They didn't quite understand how that all worked and the placement of the universe and all that, or the solar system or all that. But like, it was pretty well like, yeah, no, the Earth's got it's round. There's like, it's got a curve to it, right?
Mhm.
Like, that was kind of like already on the table. So like, it's just, again, flat earther. I love this.
The Dark Ages. Fuck the Dark Ages.
So how does Atlantis and flat earther work together? Shit, you may ask. Well, he weaves Atlantis into his argument. Similarly, the philosopher Timaeus also describes this earth as surrounded by the ocean, and the ocean as surrounded by the more remote earth. For he assumes there is an island to the west, Atlantis, out in the ocean towards Gadria or Cadiz, and it's huge. He says 10 kings from the island got mercenaries from other nations, conquered Europe and Asia, but then got schooled by the Athenians, and then God just sank the island. Because, you know, both Plato and Aristotle praised the philosopher Timaeus, and Proclus even wrote a commentary on him. Timaeus basically says stuff similar to what we believe, just moving the action from east to west. Plus, he mentions those 10 generations and that land beyond the ocean. Honestly, it's pretty clear that they all just ripped off Moses and they called it their own work, guys. This is what this guy's arguing.
Oh my Lanta.
Like, I don't understand like how Moses is like getting, but whatever. I mean, I guess the whole idea of like the plagues and stuff, but like,
I
feel like it's a
guess.
very different story. I mean, the only thing they have in common is natural disasters.
Yeah, and I
But
mean,
they're not even like the
people cling
same
to stories
natural
around
disaster.
natural disasters, though. They really do.
Yeah.
I don't
But
know.
like, Egypt wasn't like flood and like, you know, Egypt wasn't like submerged underwater and like never to be seen again. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, different kinds of natural disasters. Granted, if we're looking at the Thera theory, which we will talk about later at some other point, like, if Thera was the volcanic eruption that inspired this whole thing, then yeah, actually there is some evidence that also may have inspired the plagues from the Bible because of like these like side effects that were causing things to happen. That's a whole different rabbit hole, though.
Yes.
My point is that no one was ripping off the Bible.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's what Cosmos believes. And he essentially uses Atlantis to prove that point. And supporting this idea that the earth was flat, which I also have to question. He goes like, oh, there was a sea and then there was land around the sea. Okay, well, then what's around that land?
Yep. You were just going to fall off the edge of the earth. It's okay. That's why
like,
we
it's
fall
just
into
like,
chasms.
is there a sea and then land and then sea and then land and then just forever? I don't know. Like,
it's a giant
like,
target.
I just need you to think about this for a minute, guy. But it just goes to show that even in ancient times, Atlantis was a story that everyone had opinion on. And they weren't afraid to use it to bolster their own wildly different theories, whether it was about philosophy, religion, or apparently even the shape of the world.
But here is where we will leave it for now. Next time, we will dig deeper as we explore how the ideas of Atlantis developed into modern times and how that influenced the image and the underrated movies of our time. And buckle up because some of it is really not great. So, now, as you know, we are a new podcast and we are always looking to please the powerful and terrible God that is the algorithm. So, wherever you are listening to this, whether it be Spotify, Apple, iHeart, or YouTube, if you like us, take some time to give us a positive review. It goes a long way for us and keeps us from sinking into the dark, murky waters of a long forgotten podcast.
Also, if you're listening to this, thank you for being a patron. Here, you can continue to hang out with us and get exclusive content like video casts, where we might try and make ancient recipes, talk about topics that couldn't fit into the main arcs of our podcast, and just general being batshit and dumpster fires. Research materials and books cost a lot of money, folks, and it takes a lot of time to create this show, so the support you're giving us is greatly appreciated. Finally, if you have any ideas, comments, or just want to say hi, you can reach out to us at the Time Travelers Podcast at gmail.com. We love it when people say hi, and as always, thanks for listening.
Bye for now.